So some of you might remember about 6 months ago, there was a watermelon red pearl challenge going across YouTube. All the different lure makers were making their versions of watermelon red pearl. Well, at that time, I was moving, changing jobs. I just had a lot going on. And to be honest, I kind of forgot about the challenge. Well, today we're going to revisit that challenge and we're going to make our version of watermelon red pearl. Now, what I'm going to do, so the recipe that Michael used in his video is exactly what I would have done. If I were to make that color, that is the recipe that I would have used. So to try to keep things from being too repetitive and to give you guys more color options and things to compare, I'm going to use some products that I haven't seen anybody else use and I've never used myself. So I just recently picked up a couple colors to use for this, and let's get over here and I'll show you what we got. So for our watermelon side, I've got the watermelon colorant from Fat Guys Fishing. I just picked this one up and I'm going to see how well that looks. And then for our red pearl side, so Hobby Lobby now has in the Pearl X line interference powders, and they have an interference red. They have a few different colors. I have the red and the blue, but today we're going to take a look at this red and see how well it looks. We've got our plastic ready to go. Now, since I haven't used this color, I don't know how thick it is, so I'm just going to start with 20 drops on the top. There's our 20 drops. Now, just initially stirring this in, it looks like that's going to be pretty thin. So let's go, I think I'm going to go ahead and go to another 20. That's pretty thin. There's our next 20, which puts us at 40 drops. Now, I don't want to go too concentrated on this because you do want the glitter to be pretty visible. I think that right there is going to be pretty good. For the glitter, we're going to go with the small black, and we're going to do a 1/8 teaspoon of that. For our small red, I'm going to go back to this apple red from Barlow's. I've been using it a lot and really like it. We're going to go with a pretty heaping scoop of that one. And then I'm going to use the large 0.062 black, and I'm going to go with a 1/16 of a teaspoon of that. We'll get those mixed in and see if we need to add any more. So I think I want to add a little bit more of that larger size of the black. Not a lot. I'm going to take my 1/16 again, but it's probably only going to be about 3/4 of a scoop with that one. Because we don't want too much of the large black, but I do want just a little bit more than what we had. I think that'll be pretty good. And now for the interference pearl side, we're going to go with 1/8 of a teaspoon of this. This is more interference pearl than what I would normally use if I was trying to do like a highlight powder, but we want this one to be a little bit more concentrated to kind of give that white pearl effect to it. Now I could cheat here. As you guys saw, Chris Jones added a drop of black to his recipe, which is probably the key ingredient. However, I probably would not have done that prior to watching his video, so I'm not going to cheat. I'm just going to leave it as if I were making it without watching his video first, and we'll see how it looks. And my initial impression of that Pearl X powder is it actually looks pretty good. My plastic's starting to cool off. It is freezing cold out here today, so I'm going to get both of these heated back up to an even temp, and we're going to make our first run. I would say the two most common baits in this color are frog and a jerkbait, so that is what we have made today. So let's get this frog mold open and see how it looks. I had one that didn't fill in, which I kind of expected. The highest temperature I've seen in the last 3 days is 19 degrees, so that doesn't surprise me. Everything else seems to have turned out really well. Let's see what that red pearl side looks like. That looks pretty good. It is a little bit more translucent than what I expected. I thought it would be a little bit thicker. But the color itself looks fantastic. It's just a little bit thinner. Maybe if I added a little bit more, but hey, if you're looking for a relatively translucent highlight powder, that Pearl X one might be a good option. So there's a quick look at our frogs. Now let's see how the jerkbaits turned out. There's the top side. And there's our belly. So again, looking at it from the bottom, it looks pretty good, but then when you go to the side, it is pretty translucent. So while I think this has potential to be a really good watermelon red color, I think you would need to add a little bit more of that interference powder than some of the other brands. But nonetheless, it looks pretty good. I'll take a couple of each of these baits off and we'll take a close-up look. Here's a look at both of those baits. So the watermelon side turned out really good. That watermelon from Fat Guys Fishing is just a nice standard watermelon. But then if you look at the belly, so if I hold them up like this, you can see that red interference or highlight effect. But then when you have them on the side, it's pretty see-through. So what I'm going to do, I think I have enough plastic left over. I'm going to remelt it back down, add a little bit more of that interference powder, and see if we can thicken that up just a tad. So I did have enough leftover plastic. Here is run number 2. And if I flip these over, you can definitely see we have more of that pearl look instead of it being quite as see-through. So what I did was I heated it back up, added another 1/8 of a teaspoon. So if you put about 1/4 of a teaspoon per cup into your plastic with that Pearl X powder, this is what you're going to get. Again, adding a drop of black like what Chris Jones did would have really made this pop. And in person, you can see the red a lot more than what's coming through on camera. But that is just another cool way to make some watermelon red pearl. And there you have it, guys. There is another way to make watermelon red pearl. Now, both of the products that I use today, the Fat Guys Fishing Colorant and that interference powder from Hobby Lobby, they are a little bit on the thinner side. So you do want to make it a little bit more concentrated compared to some of the others. But if you're looking for something that stays really translucent, those are some really good options. Let me know how that compares to some of the other watermelon red pearls you've seen, and let me know in the comments what you guys think. Hopefully you guys like this video. If you did, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. We'll see you on the next one.